So much for your company. I am Pius Kojobaka. Let's now dig in now. NPP flag bearer Dr. Bawumia is looking to implement at least 9 major wide-ranging tax reforms if elected president. Key among them is the scrapping of the electronic levy and the betting tax. At the launch of the NPP 2024 manifesto here in the central region, or western region I should say, he announced plans to digitize all aspects of the country's tax administration to reduce leakages. There is more in the following reports.
Significant move to reshape Ghana's tax landscape, the presidential candidate of the New Patriotic Party, Dr. Bawumia, has unveiled an extensive tax policy proposal during his manifesto launch. The proposal is designed to provide substantial relief to taxpayers while stimulating economic growth. Addressing concerns within the betting industry, Dr. Bawumia proposes abolishing the betting tax. This move is intended to ease the financial burden on both the industry and its patrons. The sector currently contributes an estimated 5.1 billion Ghana cedis in revenue to the government. Additionally, Dr. Bawumia has proposed eliminating the electronic levy, which brings in about 8.27 billion cedis in revenue. To combat smuggling, the proposal includes a reduction of the withholding tax for small-scale good export to 1%. This measure aims to make legal export more appealing and to reduce illegal activities within the sector. Dr. Bawumia is also advocating for digitization of all aspects of tax administration. This digital transformation is expected to reduce leakages, improve efficiency, and simplify the tax filing process. For importers, the proposal suggests implementing a flat rate for all imports, which would bring predictability and stability to the pricing of imported goods. Additionally, port charges will be harmonized with those of competing regional ports, particularly in Togo. This would mean duties at Ghana's port will be the same or even lower, making Ghana a more attractive destination for trade. Dr. Bawumia's tax policy proposal also includes a one-time tax amnesty for all Ghanaians and corporate entities. This amnesty would cover the payment of taxes from previous years and waive any interest and penalties for failing to file taxes in those years. This initiative is expected to encourage compliance and bring more taxpayers into the formal sector. The proposal aims to broaden the tax base by leveraging digitalization to capture more eligible taxpayers, which would help reduce the pressure on the few who currently shoulder the tax burden. Additionally, Dr. Bawumia plans to reform the value-added tax regime by merging all levies into a single line item levy. This consolidation levy would be treated as part of input and output VAT, eliminating the cascading effect in the current system. This reform aims to simplify the VAT system and reduce the tax burden on businesses.
2024 manifesto of the New Patriotic Party prioritizes what you, the Ghanaian people, say are your priorities. The manifesto lays out a clear path of how we plan to solve these major problems, among others. That is why my government will make business and jobs our #1 priority.
The 2024 general election is scheduled for December 7th and will be a key decider as political parties market their policies to the populace. Winston Taki for Joy Business.
All right, so we want to analyze the tax plans of Dr. Bawumia further. Let's go on Zoom and speak to tax consultant Francis Timoboy. Francis, thanks so much for joining us on Business Live. And the question on the minds of many is that really, how realistic is the proposed one-time tax amnesty in addressing past tax evasion, of course, encouraging compliance among businesses and individuals, you would say?
So Pius, it is visible. However, our view is that if you continue to use a tax amnesty over and over again, you are discrediting the tax system and you may be encouraging tax non-compliance. The reasons being that in 2022-2023, we just finished one tax amnesty. So if you say that everybody who has not been compliant in 2025, you're going to wipe off their penalties. What you are telling those who are complying is that there is that expectation that even if you don't comply and don't pay your taxes, you go scot-free. But a tax system should not behave like that. It should be full enforcement. In 2017, we did a similar one, and the GRA came out to say that, look, it wasn't successful. The object is that if you forgive them, you expect them to voluntarily come forward and then they come and pay the taxes, but you finish and nothing happens. So I think that it's a good policy. However, the timing is too close to what we just finished. And if we could maybe delay it a little bit, it would have been better.
All right, so let's assess the impact this could have on the economy generally. But when you talk about the emergence of all levies into a single line item, really, what impact really would that have on business, especially regarding the cost management and, of course, pricing?
So, Pius, I think that policy is very fantastic, and I wish that I could even make the proposal to Parliament before the elections. You remember August 2018, the government decided to separate the VAT from the levies. And so immediately about 6% of every purchase of goods and service becomes a cost to you as a business. In principle, if you're a business, you are not a consumer. And therefore, any cost you incur, you're supposed to pass it on to the final consumer. But here's the case, the separation had made it such that you have to absorb the 6% into your cost buildup. So it didn't really look like a consumption tax, and we were rather punishing the production system. So if it's able to reinstate the old position as we had in 2018, fantastic. Prices of goods and services may come down, and businesses may have that free cash flow to operate. They are not supposed to bear these levies. It's the consumer who must bear it.
But could the reduction of withholding tax, for example, for small-scale gold exports to 1% effectively curb smuggling, or there are other factors that need to be addressed?
There are multiple factors. Currently, it is 1.5%. Yes, we hear the buyers say that their margin is not even up to 1%, and so a reduction is cool. But if you look at the object of this reduction, we want to curb smuggling. Can 0.5% difference curb smuggling? I don't think so. We should rather take measures that will prevent the illegal smuggling of these minerals outside. And again, we just established a local refinery. So why are we rather encouraging export by reducing the taxes and also maybe not providing for the local refinery? We should rather, make sure that export becomes more expensive, and then we give the raw material to the local refinery to refine. In give or take, the 0.5% cannot prevent people from, smuggling.
All right, Francis, I want your quick thoughts on this as well, because it's of major concern to many. How significant could the scrapping of the betting tax be for the economy and, of course, the potential revenue loss that may have on government expenses?
It's very significant. Betting has grown from 2016 to 2023. It rose from $70 billion globally to close to 90 billion, and it's growing. And if you look at Ghana, it's quite significant. What I was looking for is that he rather reduce the rate. We introduced the betting tax in 2015 as an investment income, where if you win, then you pay tax at 5%. Then in 2016, we introduced a threshold of 2,592. That's below that amount, you don't pay. But unfortunately, when we're bringing it back in 2013, after its abolishment in 2017, we took the rate to 10%. I think that 10% is high. Let's bring it down, especially because we tax only the winnings. If we take it off completely, there is that inequity, because while somebody is investing in normal investment and somebody is also placing a bet, which both are investment, then you are not being fair to the other. I think the rate is what he needs to, bring it down to the previous rate of 5%, and it will be fine.
Well, the former president has equally also promised to scrap that tax.
I would have recommended that he maintains that tax and rather reduce the rates.
Okay, so will the proposed digitalization of tax administration and, of course, the flat rate for importers truly reduce leakages and improve efficiency, or there are potential implementation challenges, you think?
Yes, for digitalization, yes, there are implementation challenges. We started this EVAT some years ago, and trust me, on the ground there are challenges. Technology adoption is quite difficult. Even for some big companies, they are still struggling. So it's a fantastic idea. It is the way to go. Businesses are moving online, and therefore the tax administration must also be digitalized. However, we need a lot of resources to be able to, implement these things. I think that if we're able to reduce the tax rate at the port also, clearly it will make business very good. There are too many taxes at the port, and I'm happy that he's going to, put all of these things in there, or maybe minimize the tax line. However, we just have to be careful, because the more we focus on maybe the other sub-regions, the dynamics are not the same. We just have to make sure that it doesn't lead to revenue loss. Otherwise, we may be also going against the IMF, program, because anything that leads to revenue loss, IMF will be against it.
Thank you so much, Francis Timoboy. We truly appreciate your time having great discussion with us here on Business Live. Thank you so much. Now, the cedi for the first time in recent days recorded an appreciation against the dollar based on performance tracking on a daily basis. But is this a sign that the worst is over for the cedi, and how sustainable is this development? George Yafi tells us more.
National appreciation was recorded last week when you look at how the cedi fared in a day compared to the previous day in what some may call the day-on-day performance. This is based on the price quotes that some of the commercial banks offered last week and how it traded on the interbank market on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. Some of the major commercial banks in the forex trading space have told Joy Business that the cedi's performance can be linked to improved dollar supply coming from the Bank of Ghana. And they even expect this development to continue this week in terms of the cedi's good run. The local currency's monthly depreciation has slowed from over 7% in May 2024 to just about 1% in July this year. But there are some who would also want to link the cedi's recent performance to the dollar weakening in value on the international market. But on the question of sustainability and whether the cedi's woes are over, well, time will tell.
Now, Ghana's classification as a debt distressed country by the World Bank and the IMF will be reviewed as soon as it reaches a final deal with external creditors. That's assurance coming from the World Bank Country Director, Robert O'Brien. It follows concerns that despite the country reaching an agreement on how the restructuring of some of the external debts, that did not influence this latest classification on its ability to pay its debts in the future. And the World Bank Country Director tells Joy Business they are waiting for some progress to be made when it comes to the commercial creditors for the review.
Thing that we're very positive on has been all of the progress on the debt restructuring. This is obviously a critical reform area for the country. So Ghana implemented the domestic debt restructuring in 2023. It reached an agreement under the G20 Common Framework with its official creditors, a memorandum of understanding on restructuring the official bilateral debt, also very important. And it's now in progress. As of June of this year, the government announced an agreement in principle with the commercial bondholders, which is the third piece, I think, of the debt restructuring program. And so, again, very good progress, but more to do. And then lastly, a very critical point is on fiscal consolidation. So we saw very important measures taken by the government to reduce expenditures last year, which resulted in a 7.9 percentage point decrease in spending. So this is a very significant effort the government's undertaking to put the fiscal back on track. Now, there was also a small increase in revenue to GDP, 0.3% last year, which is important, but again, more needs to be done there. So we're seeing good signs of progress in terms of the recovery, but we need to continue on the debt restructuring, finalize that according to the parameters of the debt sustainability analysis that the IMF and the World Bank have, continue the fiscal consolidation, continue to bring down inflation. Those would be three of the numbers that I pay a lot of attention to in making that kind of an assessment.
All right, so I want us to have a discussion on the back of this announcement by the World Bank Country Director, Robert O'Brien, with my colleague George Yafi there. Now, I want to bring in as well Professor Peter Quartey, an economist, to help us appreciate the development there. Thanks so much, Professor Quartey, for joining us on Business Live. Good to see you. Now, first off, what do you make of this information coming from the World Bank Country Director on Ghana's debt classification?
Yeah, good evening to you and to your discerning viewers. Certainly, I think what he's saying is basically what it is. We are on track. Our fiscal deficits are coming down gradually. And then also with the negotiations, debt restructuring, etc., our debt is supposed to come down to 55% of GDP by within the medium term. Now, if we continue on that trajectory, then of course our debt sustainability, our debt description will change. Debt distress situation might not be the same, rather we will be within sustainable threshold. But that depends on how much we're able to raise revenue domestically, and then how well we manage our expenditure. I think he alluded to that. So that also depends as well on additional borrowing, because as once we have joined the IMF, I mean, we sought IMF support, and we are basically having credibility, policy credibility. We are also borrowing, and we are attracting additional funding from external sources, etc., even some domestic as well. So if we don't manage it carefully, we'll restructure our debts, but then we'll bring in additional loans, which will then worsen our debt GDP situation, and this reclassification might not inure to our interest. So we need to guard carefully against additional borrowing whilst we continue to grow the economy. But the numbers is a ratio, debt to GDP. When you increase your GDP, you're able to borrow, or even if you borrow, your debt GDP ratio will still be within sustainable thresholds.
As we work towards that, hearing this comment from the country director, I guess this will send a positive signal to the economy, and I don't know what you make of that, whether it's possible.
Well, certainly. I mean, it tells you we are on track. I mean, he was quite pleased with the progress so far. He mentioned the revenue numbers. He mentioned how much government expenditure has been able to come down during the period. So it's a positive signal, and I think, but we shouldn't be solely headed. We shouldn't go thinking all is well. We still have to work harder. As he mentioned, there is room for improvement. So let's continue to work hard, especially because we are in the election year. If we are not careful, we'll put aside some of these gains and rather pursue the elections and at the peril of fiscal consolidation. So let's be very careful as we do. We've seen this before. 2016, we went beyond threshold, and that also cost us a lot. So we don't want to revisit the past.
But Professor Quartey, are you worried or surprised at the time it has taken for a final deal to be reached with these external creditors?
Not surprised, but I'm also not worried because we're almost there. As you can see, the framework has been set by the big players. The IMF, World Bank have set the framework. So we're going to be within the framework. But Ghana has a very complex debt structure. If you look at the kinds of debts we have, bilateral, multilateral, we have this Eurobonds and private creditors. It's quite a complex thing that we got ourselves into. And to disentangle ourselves is what is making us taking so long. And I believe it's a lesson to us as we borrow. We ought to be more geared towards borrowing from the multilateral concessional loans and less of the capital market. But this complex web that we find ourselves, when it comes to the crunch, it's quite difficult to disentangle yourself.
Maybe a quick thought from you on the cedi's sustained recovery on the market and what can be done to sustain that.
We've always talked about long-term solutions, but in the immediate term, I mean, this goes for our program and also the Bank of Ghana, especially intervening from time to time, is certainly not the surest way to go, so that it doesn't bring panic to the market. But in all, if we manage our fiscal, I mean, if you don't run too huge a deficit and we're able to fight inflation, then people will be compelled, people will not even compelled, but very willing to hold the cedi as a store of value. But you see, when there is high inflation, people prefer to store their wealth in the foreign currency or the major currencies or buy land, etc. So the key thing is fighting inflation and also avoiding huge fiscal deficits. while we pursue the long-term solution of growing our exports so that we can attract more foreign exchange.
Professor Peter Quartey, thanks so much for your time here on Business Live. We appreciate your thoughts.
My pleasure.
You're still watching Business Live. We are back with more. Please stay. Back to Business Live. The Amanfeman Rural Bank PLC is set to grant a loan facility of up to 400,000 cedis to support small and micro-scale enterprises to boost local productivity amidst the prevailing economic difficulties. The groundbreaking initiative comes as the bank records an unprecedented total deposit of a little over 1 billion cedis as of the end of June 2024, as well as other financial support programs from the government. There is more in this report.
After closing 2023 with a customer deposit of 780 million cedis, the Amanfeman Rural Bank at the beginning of this year set a 1 billion cedi deposit target. The bank focused on expanding its client base and provided support to augment business operations of clients. The historic record represents an impressive growth of 70.03% from the same period in June 2023, from approximately 631 million to a little over 1 billion cedis in June 2024. Following the unprecedented growth, the bank is setting aside 500 million cedis through its Donkomi promo to provide financial support and investment to micro and small enterprises in the country. The chief executive of the bank, Dr. Alexander Asma, explains the move aligns seamlessly with the bank's vision to empower the MSME sector, driving growth and aiding the recovery of national economy.
We set up an objective to grow our deposit to 1 billion by the end of 2024. This was announced at the opening of our Doom branch in February by the chairman that our deposit is going to go up to 1 billion by the end of the year.
We shall be bringing you more in our subsequent bulletins. That's it for Business Live for today. I am Pius Kojobaka. Do enjoy the rest of our programs. Bye.